I think this will resonate with some of our community members. You all really are the face of the Department of Defense. In some of our communities, due to the geographic dispersion, you may be, or one of your people that are in your units may be the only face of a person in uniform that our civilian partners have the opportunity to interact with. So it's a tremendous responsibility that we represent ourselves in a way that earns trust, earns confidence, and fosters that collaboration with our community partners, and you do that so well. So to our community partners here today and those that may be listening, you're the reason we're here today. But what we do at IRT and what makes this training so valuable to the Department of Defense is its direct linkage to the strategic guidance embodied in our National Defense Strategy. The global environment has required the military to undergo a readiness resurgence. The National Defense Strategy significantly changed our focus in DoD from contingency operations that we've all lived for the last 18 years to great power competition. This has forced DoD to think differently about how we train our force. So the IRT program is helping to prepare our warfighters for the current global environment through engagement with our community partners and providing creative training opportunities that ultimately increases our unit readiness. IRT program facilitates this in 3 ways, and I'd like to talk about those briefly. Building military readiness, fostering partnerships, and through business reform by developing and implementing innovative and adaptive approaches to training. So IRT helps prepare our service members for the current global environment through engagement with community partners. We cannot have collective readiness in our units without service members who are proficient in their individual skill sets. Great power competition that we've talked about demands ready units, and IRT missions help provide that individual readiness. For example, during the mission at Camp Kamasa in Mississippi from March 4th through July 28th, the Air Force Reserve, Marine Corps Forces Reserve, and Air National Guard constructed a bridge over a small creek. They installed additional site utilities and the construction of 8 duplex cabins. The Air National Guard's 200th Red Horse Squadron, anybody in here from there? Okay. They worked on this project before going directly to deployment, which allowed them to deploy with increased readiness as a result of what they did in IRT.
I remember so well when the first group of planning came out to see the land, the planning committee came out to look at the land and standing out there, and it was a jungle. I mean, we had thousands of pine trees about this high planted everywhere, bushes, and there's a pulpwood road that led through the camp. That was it. It was terrible conditions out there, and someone standing out there said, in a year you won't recognize this place. It'll be totally different. It was hard for us to really understand that. But when they started coming, when the program started coming at the end of March, April of 2018, they cleared about 50 acres where the Camp Corps will be, built roads, put in a maintenance barn, and built an open-air recreation building. Neither one are completed, but the only reason they're not completed is because y'all are storing materials in there. That's where the wood is. That's where the shingles are. That's where the siding is. Everything's being stored under these shelters, so they'll easily be completed later. But that was the first year. The second year, the duplex cabins went in. Now, a cabin, I think of a cute little cabin in the woods, but these cabins are 2,000 square feet each. We got to have wheelchairs been able to manipulate around every cabin. So the 8 cabins that are built right now will house 160 people. That's without bunking them. We'll have some camp facilities that will come to the camp. They can have bunk beds, so you can double it. But in case this wasn't clear, this is for summer 5-day camps for these different groups to come use. And then through the rest of the year, adults could use it for 5-day camps, so they could be retreats, so they could be daycares. They could be nursing homes could come out there. Being the oldest one in the room, I feel free to talk about the nursing homes. They could come out to there and have a day of fishing, making crafts, doing things, making ceramics and all. So it's a full-fledged camp with the horses and the lake and the swimming pool, ceramics, multi-purpose building where you could stay all day, a teaching kitchen for mainly kids with diabetes and Crohn's disease can learn special recipes. So it's it will be the nicest camp, probably in the United States, but certainly in Mississippi when we get through with the skill that y'all are bringing in to get this camp built.
In 17, we had civil affairs. We had 2 missions for civil affairs. The surveys that they helped us collect has already given Webb County, Laredo, Webb County, a little over $3 million worth of grants with the new information that they've gathered regarding colonias. The engineering, we've had 2 years of engineering work, all working in rural communities, and they've resurfaced roads that are often washed off right now. We have a lot of our communities that people can't get in or out. And you will see their cars parked on the side of the highway, because what people in colonias and rural communities do is that they drive their cars while they can out of the muddy areas so that they can get to work or get to school. So you have a lot of vehicles that are parked on the side of the road right now because we've had a lot of rain.
Wow.
And then we also had medical missions. Both years we had medical missions, and I just want to thank everybody here because everybody contributed to people being able to see their hands for the first time. We had people that hadn't seen their hands. They didn't know they had so many wrinkles. We had a couple of husband and wife showing their hands to each other as they sat next to each other when they first got their first pair of glasses. There was one young lady that loves green. I wonder why. But when she got her pair of glasses, the only thing she could talk about was all the different shades of green that she was able to see now. We have so many stories of how you have changed lives and what you all have done as a team, but also individually. And your team members, ma'am, they get hugs and they get smiles, and people don't even have to say anything. They just walk and they'll grab your arms or your legs, and all they can say is give you a hug. Our men and women in the military are very welcomed in our communities.
So our region includes Fort Gordon, and so the communities are very in tune with the military, work closely together with the military. A lot of people in the communities actually probably work on the post there. But what the community people who attend the IRT see is not just you in uniform, but you as the professional that you came in as. We've had people who first 50 years was the first time he'd ever been to a dentist. That the person was wearing a military uniform, that wasn't as important to him as what he got out of that visit. We've had a young lady who had 22 teeth pulled and went back to work that day because her mouth had never felt better. So it's not just the uniform side that you see. And if you do, in your initial tours, go to the elementary schools or the middle schools, every single one of the kids is going to call you Army Man. Really doesn't matter what you are, but you're going to be an Army Man. But the interaction that you all got to have with those school students and introducing them, a lot of them, first time they're really seeing people come through in uniform, I think long-term will play a big role in what they decide to do in their lives.
We were limited on the number of dental services that could be provided and by the number of chairs, really. So by having that coach there that the military could use, it helped. Tell one quick story about how that helped. Had a young lady come in. She was 9 or 10 years old. She had a very visible cavity on her front teeth. She wouldn't talk in public much. She would cover her mouth when she did talk. She never smiled. She saw the poster for our military IRT at her school, took a photograph of it with her phone, took it home to her parents and said, I could get my teeth fixed. And, her dad brought her in the first day. They didn't get there in time. All the spots were filled. Came in the next day, and I had heard their story by that time, and the spots were taken again. But I was able to talk to Colonel Robinson, a dentist, and told her the story, and she said, I'll see her myself. I'm in a command role, but I'm going to step back into a clinical role. We'll do it on the coach. The university's coach was set up for pediatric patients. She saw her there, and the young lady was able to be treated, and life-changing for her. One of the additional things that we were able to get from the mission was the career exploration opportunity for some of our youth. In missions, we've had kids come in to volunteer from schools to work with military professionals to see that there are career opportunities in the military for these folks that don't involve carrying a rifle, that they could be a nurse or a dentist or study logistics or any public affairs, any of those other fields. So that was a great opportunity for us. One of the most exciting one of the most exciting community activities we had this year, our Boy Scout troop does a flag retirement ceremony twice a year. We invited our folks from the clinic to come and help, the military to come and help. So we had about 30 young men and women in Scouting BSA that folded and retired flags alongside about 30 military personnel. They will remember that forever. Mm-hmm.
So for this past year, Operation Cold Country, the previous year we were in schools, which made it really easy. Those were the largest buildings in those smaller communities. This year, the IRT dates overlapped the start of school, so we couldn't be in the school buildings. I really appreciated the military's patience with me because we couldn't manage the timeline that was needed for the planning because we couldn't find the locations for the clinics and for bed down. So it was a process in working with those community partners. And so I'm called a community partner, but I have many community partners in those 4 counties that we worked with. And so it was finding that particular church or maybe that particular community building. And it just took time. And so each conference call that we had, it was, Carol, have you nailed down the 4 clinic sites? No, but maybe I can do it between now and our next call. And it wasn't until the final planning meeting, so we were on site doing the final planning meeting, that the last clinic site really came together. So I think the patience of the military and their understanding that the work was going on behind the scenes and it would come together, I really appreciated that.
And so we thought we were prepared, but then there were things we weren't prepared for. And when the military would start, we had certain things that we had set as goals with our board, with the credit union that we ended up borrowing some money from. We had set certain goals, and the military might not have followed those goals every time. They were doing great things, but it wasn't always what we expected them to happen next. Well, a maintenance barn. We didn't know there was fixing to be a maintenance barn, and suddenly there was a maintenance barn. We needed one, but it wasn't what we initially had said needed to be done, and it got done. And so that would have been a great thing to have talked through, maybe a little bit more. It's been invaluable as far as storing materials now, and I'm glad we've got it, but that was something that we had not expected to happen.
In any construction project, you are going to have setbacks. That's normal. We all know that. We know that as civilians. We know that as contractors. Well, we were tearing down a building, and the rubble pile was getting big, and we were hauling it off because the nearest dump was an hour and 15 minutes away. We didn't run the convoy of trucks. We were using the 30-yard containers. They weren't turning them over fast enough, so this pile was getting larger and larger and larger and larger. So it was a Wednesday. It was actually the last week of the last rotation, so we're in week 8. And my director of facilities comes up and says, "Mark, we got to do something about this pile of rubble. We got to really support this." I said, "No problem. We'll get on the phone with some of the local boys." So we get on the phone with the local boys, and the local boys said, "No problem." They bring their dump trucks out. They got rebar. They got all kinds of stuff. They got places to put it. This is great. Well, we get to the bottom of the pile, and we realize, where'd the manhole cover go? Where is that manhole? What happened was somewhere along the way between rotation 2 and rotation 3, or 3 and 4, really don't know, the manhole cover either got scooped away or slid away, we don't know what, but 10 feet deep, 4 feet wide, a main sewer line was full of brick, dirt, jackhammered up concrete, completely full. It was the main line that comes from our elementary dorm, and our students were due to come back in 3 weeks. So we got on the phone with every plumber we knew, every safety clean company that we knew, and nobody could help us out. We were down to literally Thursday night before Lieutenant Canada was leaving. My students were coming back in 3 days, and we still had a hole that you could walk across that was supposed to be 10 feet deep with the sewer line. Well, again, just by chance, Lieutenant Canada gets on the phone with a local plumbing company. Local plumbing company says, no problem. They called the city of Kaiser, which was the next city over. They happen to have a giant vacuum truck that actually could handle this. So on Friday morning, the very last day of the mission, Lieutenant Canada stood out there and oversaw the removal of blocks that were as large as these televisions, several bricks, all kinds of stuff, and cleared that pipeway. So we just simply worked together as a team. But of course, the takeaway from that is that we on the civilian side and you on the military side in that partnership need to be mindful of what's in your pathway, because that could have easily been avoided had we come running out saying, wait, don't put that there, or had somebody on the IRT side, observe that.
If I remember correctly, the arrival date for the troops was set back 1 day, and I was all hyped up for the original date. So when everything got moved to the next day, I kind of just sat at my desk and said, well, there's not anything I can do about that. They're taking care of it. I mean, moving 350-something itineraries and working with the community and the airports division, to make changes to the schedule was phenomenal, but that was something you all did.
Right, and we were still able to start services on time?
We still started on time.
Mm-hmm. And for the community side of the house, there was still response measures and emergency prep that you had to do.
Sure. Our Emergency Operations Center was already set up, and we were already thinking about, what highways or roadways do we need to be worried about in terms of flooding, our own staff making sure they could get home to prepare their families in case we needed to call them back to work and those kinds of things. That all had to be done in a matter of days.
So for the medical health missions, I think it would have been really helpful for us to understand what the ideal locations would be for offering those type of services. Captain Fagan's team, we dragged them out to the middle of this huge field with no electricity and no running water, because that was a spot, that was a space that we had. We didn't know that really is not the most ideal space to offer those type of services. So I think going into it, just understanding what are the basic requirements, the basic needs for a health mission. What is your ideal space? What does that look like? Because maybe we could have had all of that in place ahead of time, and then we would have been able to sort of expedite the process of securing the locations where we eventually offered our services.
Sometimes the communication, the translation gets lost. And I think you all know how important it is to be able to talk just one-on-one with people. But a really good example was when we were sitting down with the airports division talking about the arrival, and Chief Solier was sitting there listening to the ground transportation company describe how they could facilitate and coordinate the buses coming in to pick up folks. And afterwards he says, so I just want to clarify, you're going to provide shuttle service every hour on the hour. And she said, no, we thought we'd just, whenever you call us, we'll come. And I knew that isn't how they could provide that kind of service, because this transportation company provided transportation company for the disabled and the elderly who couldn't otherwise get to their appointments. And that's where they finally connected, where she understood he wasn't really asking her to do more than she was capable of doing, but trying to set some parameters for what he was asking for and what she could provide. And it worked out beautiful. I understood that on arrival, the buses were there when they needed to be there. There might have been some wait time, but it all worked out really well.
Having one person who was sort of the officer in charge on the community side, that being me, and then Colonel Magnet, trying to funnel everything up as best possible through either the military side or the community side, and then have the two of us talk. Because what we found is when we weren't doing that, we had a lot of things that were being duplicated, a lot of needless waste. And so once we streamlined that process, it really worked very well. Colonel Magnet was also generous with his time. He came to the community met every other week for planning, which was really important to carry out the work that had to be done leading up to our mission. And so Colonel Magnet was there, and he and I texted and called very often in between those meetings so that we could make sure we were both on the same page and we were getting things done that we had to get done. So it really worked out well.
What I often say about a wedding in terms of, DV Day is a wedding, you're going to put one foot in front of the other, and you're going to plan, you're going to be ready. Ultimately, things are going to go wrong, but that's okay because nobody knows that it went wrong. You're the only one who knows your plan. But ma'am, what did I say to you? That
was pretty darn close. Yeah, that was exactly it. We're going to eat. I remember because you were providing the lunch, and you actually brought a band as well, which was absolutely wonderful. We loved it. Thank you.
Thank you.
But yeah, very, very much the same. It's going to go wrong, and it's okay, but everybody's going to love each other in the end.
I don't know what in the world the initials mean that y'all use all the time. That was a big one. And that was me, learning those. The second year, this past year, it was just so smooth and so easy because we had done had that first year. The first year, and someone, I think you used the term, we didn't know what we didn't know. There were things we didn't understand that were going on, but we didn't know what questions we should be asking. So the constant communication and talking to somebody was helpful. And then also having the same person, in our case, Chief Gilbin, to be with us last 2 years and will be next year, makes a big difference to have someone that I don't know what they're talking about, and have someone you can call and that's been with you before that you can, refer to. That helped a lot.
Early on, we were in the same boat. We didn't know what we didn't know. Thank God. We probably would have been scared to death had we known what we were getting into. That was a big issue. One of the things that I think was most helpful in this most recent IRT was the development of a relationship between the military and the community well in advance. My organization had conference calls and face-to-face meetings with our community partners on a weekly basis, and Colonel Adamich assigned a liaison to be on those calls with us on a weekly basis. So we compiled a list of questions that we would fire at the sergeant. He didn't know the answers most of the time, but would take those back, and by the next week had answers for us. That ongoing, constant communication was hugely helpful. The lieutenant colonel and I talked every few days as we got closer to the mission.
One of the components that stood out for myself and my team on the community side that we were not prepared for was the mental component of this. And one of the things you want to be mindful of is it's also a training opportunity for us as your community partner. And that's not something that was in the foreground of our mind. In the foreground of our mind was, okay, we've got to get these projects done. This is such a blessing. This is great. We got to get these materials here. We got to get the drawings done. All the logistical pieces and the tangible pieces. But I can tell you, by the time I got to week 5, I was saying to some of my management staff, one of you is going to break. I just don't know which, and I don't know when. But for us, it was really a test of our mental fortitude, working through the various challenges and the multiple fires. IRT is all-encompassing. So when the boots hit the ground, everything is an emergency. Everything is time-sensitive because those boots will leave the ground. That puts people under a lot of stress. And as I described it to others, many of you in this room, if not all of you in this room, are trained for that. You are trained to perform well under duress. We as civilians are not. So I would recommend pointing that out early on, saying be prepared, be mentally prepared, and I think that that's something that would be very beneficial to everybody. And I'll tell you, let me also say this, It was a blessing and a benefit. It was a benefit, maybe the largest benefit to our organization and our team. As important as those facilities are, that mental capacity that we have built and that teamwork that has been fostered on our side as a result of your leadership and your partnership has been probably one of the greatest things that's come to our organization. We're grateful to you.
Maybe they don't know what IRT is because they just know the military's in town, and they absolutely love that. Our community, like everybody's, I imagine, we don't get the opportunity to see a group of military, and the people in our community, a small town, have appreciated so much the camp being built, but even more, they're thankful for the opportunity to say to you, thank you for your service, because they don't get that. And if you're trying to decide where to go with your mission, every Thursday night you get a home-cooked meal if you come to Camp Kamasa. And it's one way of saying thank you for coming to our community. We make sure that that happens. And it's just a way to say thank you because people want to say thank you. And people want to, if they see you out during the week, buy you lunch. Or if you need some equipment, this in our town, some of the little stores and all say, well, we have a forklift you can use, or we have a ladder, you need it, things that may not have been part of the equipment that was shipped. It's just a constant looking for ways they can help. And we post on the window at our office a big picture of every group that comes in. You get to get your picture made. Well, we're not. Big group picture, and they're all over our windows. And you see people all the time stopping and looking at the faces of the people that have been in Crystal Springs and the people that are serving our country. And they really, really appreciate the military more because they've had the opportunity.
It was great for the Kentucky Air National Guard to be there on the ground in the state doing that IRT. That command group they were veterans of IRT, so they had done them before, but then doing them back for the state was great. And it was heartwarming to watch the kids and the people in general as the IRT went on interacting with the military. And I think that was a lot of your role in just putting them at ease because the uniform itself commands respect, but it can also be a little intimidating when you see it in force. But I think each person that I interacted with, the military personnel, showed a lot of kindness and a lot of compassion and really engaged the community in a one-on-one way and got to know them as people and they you as people, and I think that made a difference. One of the things that I noticed, especially last year, because it was my first time, the IRT is something that doesn't resonate with the civilian world. It's common to you to say IRT or even to say Innovative Readiness Project or training. It's military jargon. So we tried from our end this year, especially through our PR, to have a face of a medical military personnel on all of our PR stuff so that they could see that it was a physician, and also to overcome the perception that it was just for veterans, because I think there was a misconception about that. So it really took word of mouth for that to happen.